Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and we received some really good questions from inside the Red Raider subscribers this week. So I'm going to dive right into them. First one comes from Cajun Raider, who, oh, by the way, is one of my favorite posters on the board, who says, it's probably already been addressed, but how far into the big dance can this team make it, and what dominoes need to fall to, one, get there, and two, go further? He said, feel free to guzzle as much Kool-Aid as you need to get us all the way there. Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot of people today, I'm filming this Friday morning, who aren't drinking as much Kool-Aid after Texas Tech's 1-point loss to St. Joe's in Brooklyn Thursday night. But you know what? I'm still guzzling it. I still think that this team is very good. And I'll give you my reasons why. A, you have a absolute stud in JT Toppin. I think he can be a first team all Big 12 type performer this year. He's a tremendous scorer in and around the hoop. Great touch. He can go up strong. Great athleticism. Length. I mean, I don't know how long his arms are, but it's got to be, his wingspan's got to be longer than his frame, than his natural height. And he's just a beast on the boards. What a great rebounder. So I think as Texas Tech progresses and they work more towards or through JT Toppin, instead of trying to be this three-pointer team, like once they realize what this team is JT Toppin and Darian Williams around the rim, and then kicking the ball out when they're doubled. Two very good shooters. That is what this team is, not trying to do all this and that. I mean, I think they need to get simple. And that's what we saw from Texas Tech in the second half against St. Joe's. And in terms of for this team, what they need to do in order to reach that next level, well, there's a couple of things. One, they got to get better on defense. And head coach Grant McCaslin's been saying that since before the season tipped off. They have to be better on the ball defenders. And they have to figure some other things out in terms of their team defense, how they help, where they help from, all those things. But I think that's fixable. I think those things are fixable. And then also they need guys like Kevin Overton, Kerwin Walton, Christian Alexander. Those guys need to be good. I mean, like really good. They can't, no show in important games. So they do those things. I mean, I see this as a Sweet 16 caliber team, and then who knows in terms of like how healthy they are, what the matchups are, what draw they get. Do they get an NC State who's kind of goes on this amazing run and ends up in the Final Four, or they get a good draw and Texas Tech could be that team. So they're good enough to make a deep run in the tournament. This is a tournament team. There's no doubt in my mind, and they're good enough to make a deep tournament run. They're not flawless, but this is a quality squad. I think this is the best team they've had, since their Sweet 16 run where they lost to Duke in Adams' first season. Maybe even better than that, but that remains to be seen. Next question comes from Nas Raider. He says, are you expecting any freshmen to see significant playing time over the last two regular season games now that burning red shirts for some of them is no longer an issue? Not as many as one would expect. I think a DB like Peyton Morgan might play more like on special teams. Jacob Ponton is a freshman tackle they really like. McGuire mentioned him Monday when he was asked this question as somebody who could get some playing time, but not a ton. These two games are still important in terms of how we view this season for Texas Tech moving forward. And, that's not lost on Joey McGuire and the rest of the team and everything. But it is important to try and get them some playing time. It is good that they're going to have, all the practice time between the end of the regular season and the bowl game. That helps. It's not the same as game time, but some of these guys will get some playing time like on special teams where we may not think about that being a big impact, but it is still being on the field and under the lights and on TV and all that stuff. It will help some, but I'm not expecting a huge impact from freshman guys. That's a good question though, Nas. Raider Fan 01 says, do you anticipate much enthusiasm for bowl games outside the 12-team playoff? Great question. Y'all got some good questions this week. No, I don't. And that's interesting. I got like a drug dial from one of my best friends here just this week. And he was on the East Coast, and fans, like one guy was an Aggie, one guy was like a North Carolina fan, some other SEC fans and UT fans. And they were all just kind of talking about their teams. He's a fan of a top 20 SEC team that's kind of on the bubble in terms of getting in the playoffs. And his whole thing was, that his team sucks because they're not going to make the playoffs, and or they might not make the playoffs. And that kind of struck me. I listen, to what, and that was somebody telling their truth wildly. But I listen when real football fans, college football fans of their teams, say these kind of things, because I'm trying to, gauge where people are at beyond just some of the echo chambers you see online, or some people. I feel like some of the stuff online and on social media can be misleading. So I really try and get the real scoop from fans on how they're feeling about things, and all the new things that are in college football, including the 12-team playoff. And that was an interesting perspective to me. And I think a lot of people feel like that. If you're not going to the playoffs, then go into a bowl game, which there's a whole nother stratosphere or tier, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But if you're going to a bowl game instead of the playoffs, then is that like the NIT? I don't know if it's quite that severe, but it does kind of have that feel to it. And the coaches and the players, that's what they're telling us, and they have been for years, that it's not that important. Look at all the coaching changes that happens between the regular season and the bowl game. Look at all the players that sit out of bowl games if they're not in the playoffs. So, that tells me they're telling us it's not that important. So how are we supposed to react? Now, if you don't make a bowl game, then that is a whole nother tier. That's terrible. So it's still important to make a bowl game. It's just in terms of how much enthusiasm do you have about your team playing in the bowl? That's for you to decide. My personal thought is that not near as much enthusiasm as we're used to in years past, but there are still going to be some fans that are very excited. I do expect fans still to travel to bowl games, that kind of thing. So, and the players do get, gifts and all that kind of stuff and have that experience. So that's good. And the practices, I know it sounds so cliche and coach speak, but it does matter, especially in football, when it's not like you could just throw a helmet and pads on and go play in your backyard. Those extra practices are unique in the sport. It's not like baseball or basketball or golf or whatever, where you could just go out and play and practice on your game. It's just a lot harder to do. So, it's good to make a bowl. I don't expect as much enthusiasm. It's going to be interesting. I hope they expand the playoffs. I really do. I hope it's not like the basketball tournament, not that many, but maybe 24 instead of 12. And how they figure all that out, don't give me the whole, they got to figure out school and stuff like that, because nobody's making decisions with the idea of these guys being student athletes anymore. It's money. And I think the fans might like a 24-team playoff more than a 12. But this is a good start. It needed to happen. Tech Freak says, why has Oklahoma State been so bad this year? Another good question. Because I remember sitting there in Vegas at Big 12 Media Day and listening to Gundy talk about his team and looking over their roster, and that they were returning like so much production on defense. I think most of their offensive line, if not their entire offensive line, is very experienced offensive line. The Doak Walker Award winner and Ollie Gordon at running back. Bowman at quarterback, he at least is very experienced. So it just, Presley, the receiver, so much production off the team that made it to the Big 12 championship last year. And so it makes very little sense. And I've only watched 2 or 3 of their games this year, but it seems like they've had a lot of injuries on defense, and they've struggled mightily on defense. Bowman has not been good, which doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. Gordon hasn't had the kind of production that we've seen too, as teams have really kind of figured out what Oklahoma State was doing as they pivoted last year. So it just seems like it's been a confluence of just a lot of bad stuff happening to Oklahoma State. But look, that being said, Tech's going to have to play a really good game to go into Stillwater and win that game. I think it's their senior day and all that stuff. So, and sometimes that matters. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does. It just depends on the players and the team and all that stuff. But, I'm not like taking Oklahoma State lightly, but I mean, bottom line is they're 0-7 in the Big 12, and that is very surprising to me. And I think some injuries and teams kind of figuring out what they want to do, and then having a problem at quarterback. Have played a role in their really rough season this year. The final question, and this was, and I like these. Don't get me wrong. I like off the cuff questions, off subject, off topic questions. This one kind of was like, well, I had to actually look up like some of the songs because my kid's older now. He's a teenager now, and we don't listen to a lot of Disney. But TTU Braves Rock said his kid is sick, and he's been listening to a lot of Disney, taking care of his kid. But what's my favorite Disney song? And out of the list, what I used to jam out to was "Under the Sea" by the original Little Mermaid. That was my jam when I was a kid. I really liked that song. There was a couple. I think these were Disney. I think it was a Disney movie. It wasn't the Robin Hood, the animated Robin Hood movie. There was a couple of jams when I was a kid that I got down to. Then they had like a bard or something that was always playing music, kind of like between scenes and stuff like that. So, but I'd have to go, gun to my head, on favorite Disney song. It would have to be "Under the Sea." So that's going to do it for this week. Texas Tech has big game against Syracuse there in Brooklyn tonight. Texas Tech football has Oklahoma State and Stillwater Saturday afternoon. So full schedule ahead here this weekend. I'm looking forward to some good games from the Red Raiders and hopefully a couple of victories. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time.